Nico Santos stars in the new hilarious Tubi series, The Z Suite. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Let's talk a little bit about the premise of the show, the generational differences that we're seeing in life and in the office.
Thanks. Our show is about these wonderful creative executives who is the dynamic duo, Monica Marks and Doug Garcia. Monica's played by Lauren Graham, of course, and I play Doug, who is just the loyal right-hand man to Lauren Graham. And we create an ad campaign that sort of gets us canceled. And so we get replaced by the Gen Z employees at the firm. And, generational conflict, hilarity ensues.
And all that kind of fun stuff. I want to talk a little bit about Doug. He has the best lines. I mean, talk a little bit about, reading the script, practicing the delivery, and, are there a lot of outtakes, with you and Lauren Graham once she actually hears those lines, kind of coming out of your mouth?
Oh my gosh. Well, the show was created by a dear friend of mine, Katie O'Brien, and we've known each other for quite some time. And we just get each other's humor. So she really knows how to write in my voice. So when she sent me the script, I was like, I have to play this because Doug has some amazing one-liners.
Yeah.
And I really, really just sort of was looking forward to the day that I got to deliver those lines. But yeah, I mean, like we also did a lot of improv on set, which is something I always love to do. And so a lot of those scenes, Katie would just let us just go off in any direction that we wanted. And a lot of it made it to the final episodes, actually. So.
That is amazing. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about the heart, of the show, because I think the show does a really good job of seeing both sides of it, seeing the Gen Z perspective and seeing the Gen X perspective and bringing those two together. And obviously in a funny way. But is there kind of a learning curve or, kind of what, when the cast is like and the crew, when you're going over the scripts or you're filming, like, oh, I get it. Like, do you start understanding each other a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point of the show is that, like we're sort of like exploring these generational conflicts and differences, but in the end, they sort of realize that they have a lot more in common than they have differences. And but yeah, there was also just a learning curve in learning the Gen Z language. I mean, there's still some terms that I'm just like, I don't know what this means. And I had to ask like all my nieces and nephews for definitions.
There's a funny scene in one of the last episodes where Doug has to phone one of his relatives to try to understand the Gen Z perspective. But is there anything that you've taken as far as like, oh, I'm going to start using this phrase, or I'm going to start dressing this way, or I'm going to listen to this certain artist, maybe because of the show, or maybe what's your guilty pleasure
Yeah,
Gen Z?
I mean, like in a more specific sense, like there was a lot of musicians that the Gen Z kids taught me, and I didn't even really know that I already knew those songs. But they would say a name, and they're like, I have no idea who that is, and then they'd play me the song. I was like, oh, I've heard this, but in a more broader sense, Gen Z generation is just like they're not afraid to ask for what they want and what they deserve. They're not afraid to express themselves. And they're just like, I find them to be a very, very confident generation. And, I would have loved to be that confident when I was their age growing up. But, like I said, we're in different generations. So that's something I'd like to sort of keep in my pocket.
And I love too, especially with the Gen X perspective, is that I think we grew up with teaching our parents how to use technology and computers and their phones and different slangs and different artists, and now the tides have kind of turned.
Oh yeah, no, I social media is not my strong suit, and I look at these Gen Z kids and they churn out like these Instagram reels in like 15 seconds, and it'll take me like 3 hours to do one. So.
Lauren Graham, let's talk a little bit about teaming up with her, because a lot of people can relate in the office, that general divide, but kind of having their ride or die, so to speak. I don't even know if that's the Gen Z term that you would use, but just having that partner with you and work. Talk a little bit about kind of teaming up with her on this on the show.
Oh, it was great. Lauren and I have mutual friends, but we never worked together before or met. So I was really looking forward to this project. And, fortunately, we got along like gangbusters. Like from day one, it seemed like we had known each other for a really long time. And yeah, it was a really, really easy process to step into because, she's just so generous and friendly and just great. She's the best. It also helps that we both have an addiction to shopping. And so we were able to bond about shopping quite early on. So
Quite early on. That is amazing. When it came to the script, when you first actually had received it, and and you were looking through, the different characters. I mean, was there anything that you saw as far as like yourself and maybe the younger generation that you were like, oh, I know what it felt like to be this certain way and not having your voices heard or not having, that feeling of, being in charge?
Yeah, I mean, like I think every generation goes through that with the generation that has come before them. I certainly remember having those conversations with people older than me when I was their age, and now we're at the age of the other people. It just goes to show that everything is sort of like cyclical, and every generation sort of like goes through the same things. They just want to be heard. The world is moving and changing at a rapid pace, and the newest generation just has to sort of like convince the elders to catch up and move along right with them.
And then final thing here, as far as some advice, obviously, both generations are watching the show, going into the office and maybe understanding their coworkers a little bit more. Like, what piece of advice would you like to have somebody go in after they see the series, or going into it of like how they can make their workplace a little bit easier?
I think it's just like what we try to do in the series is that we have so much more in common than we do have differences. So if you just try and find common ground with anybody in your office setting, I think that's like a really good way to start and build on from there.
Wonderful. Well, Nico, thank you so much for your time today. The Z Suite now streaming on Tubi. New episodes on Thursdays.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.